Returnal 2023 PC review, my fair review. Game that kept PlayStation 5 alive for years, the only exclusive on PlayStation 5 for a long period of time. Media and PlayStation 5 players called it a masterpiece. It was Game of the Year contender. I heard so many great things about this game and it finally arrived on PC. Game that uses roguelike as its main tag to sell, but alas, it's miles away from a roguelike. It's a classic roguelite, and there is a huge difference between a roguelike and a roguelite. Is it really a masterpiece? Let's rate it properly as it deserves. First section is the story. I can't speak much about the story cause I'll spoil it. It's confusing at the start, yet extremely simple once you finish the game. Nothing short of a disappointment. You return over and over again to relive your nightmares as a self-pitying woman in her depressed mood, crying and yelling through 90% of time on every simple audio recording or a cinematic. It had potential for so much more, but devs decided to go with female protagonist during her PMS cycles. If this game had a real world, with a real Doom-like protagonist, it would be 10 times better. Every second game these days tries to be a mystery and they all repeating the same mistake. They all wanna have a Souls-like story. The real problem here is they can't do it, and then they put a story on, they drop small clues around, okay, where you need to discover through audio recordings, through some text, through some silly cinematics, and you are supposed to get the story until the game ends. And at the end, once it reveals the story, you realize that it's so freaking stupid that all of your game time was a freaking waste. As far as story goes, this game could have easily been better without 1000 silly cinematics and audio logs. I just feel it's a waste of potential, a true waste of potential for the story. 5 out of 10 for the story. Next section is game bugs and optimization. I'm fully aware that a lot of people had problems with crashes, bugs and glitches. I had only one crash during my run though. I'm also fully aware that almost everyone had stutter problems, and I had stutters also. Unforgiving for a fast-paced game to have stutter issues on every important fight. Unforgiving for a 2 years old game, $60 old game, to have stutters no matter what graphics settings you pick from, low or ultra. God forbid you turn ray tracing on. In 90% of time game works well, but that 10% of time when it stutters, it's actually 10% that matters the most. Action-packed boss battles or huge arenas. I also noticed memory leaks during my run that I resolved with simple restart. It's a demanding game, and on top of it all, it ain't optimized well at all. 6 out of 10 for game bugs and optimization. Next section is game time. It took me 9 hours to finish the main story on around 70% completion rate. You'll need around 90% to see full ending, and that's a few extra hours on top of it all. This is a very short game. 2 hours I also spent in the tower testing how high score arena works. $60 for a 9-hour long game on my blind run. If I wanted to replay now, I could finish it in 3 hours on a fresh start, and that's simply unforgiving for a roguelite. Yes, a lot of people will play it longer, game time also depends on player skill, but it's still a short game with a lot of reused assets. 5 out of 10, overpriced as hell. Next section would be game difficulty. Here is a funny section. Game sells under difficult tag. A lot of people said how this is one of the hardest roguelites ever created. Media says the same thing too, only they call it a roguelike. I don't know who is a bigger joke, media or a difficult tag. This is easily one of the easiest roguelites on the market right now. killed all bosses on the very first attempt, including the final boss. I only died once on a boss, and that's in the first hour of the game while I was learning its mechanics. It took me 8 attempts in total to finish the game. Only 8. That's a joke compared to 90% of roguelites on the market that take over 100 to 1000 attempts to complete. The funny thing also, out of 8 deaths during my run, 2 of them were intentional cause I wanted to restart, and 4 of them were cause of the stutters. So I properly died on my own mistakes only 2 times in total. That's hilarious. Next to no challenge at all. PS, I get it, it's probably harder with a gamepad, but with mouse and keyboard, this game is a joke, and I'm rating it for PC. It was a stump. 4 out of 10 for game difficulty. Next section would be maps and graphics. Gorgeous looking game with dark setting and dark colors. Amazing simplified user interface and great minimap. This game is a definition and a pioneer of presenting next-gen graphics for this decade. As far as map variety goes, there are 6 maps in total with tons of reused assets and 90% of empty space before something happens. Secrets are simple and easy to discover. Once you get used to the game, you'll realize how repetitive it is. You can clearly spot items on the ground, and that's a great thing, but alas, you can't always spot enemies cause they melt with background colors in 90% of time. 9 out of 10 for maps and graphics. The next section would be gameplay. They call it roguelike. It's a classic fast-paced third-person shooter roguelite. Simplified to the ground. As long as you time your dodge, you're invincible. Shooting is simple, and of course the game will lock you out of 50% of areas until you get all suit upgrades so you can traverse the world. By the time you do it, you're already gonna get bored of the game because you're gonna finish the game when you get all suit upgrades, so if you're crazy enough, you're gonna return back to Returnal to do all the optional stuff. What you get would be your hook, ability to dive, ability to walk on lava, and so on. That's how it buys extra time in its short lifespan. The great thing about gameplay that it's fast-paced and fun combat with more than responsive controls, but you always get interrupted during gameplay with PMS cycles and raving, wasting time on silly and depressive cutscenes. There are far better shooters than Returnal for sure. There are far better roguelites than Returnal. As far as exploration goes, it gets repetitive in less than 3 hours. Non-stop the same sequences happen. There is not enough new things and surprises as you play. Everything just keeps repeating. Empty space, arena, a bit of looting, 1-2 secrets, okay, for the extra loot, next arena, and repeat and repeat and repeat until you go mad. 8 out of 10 for gameplay. It's still fun, don't get me wrong, but it just ain't a masterpiece. Next section would be leveling and itemization. You got suit upgrades, health upgrades, raising weapon level, and parasites with different passive benefits and penalties. Classic raise damage but receive less money, receive more money but take damage from jumping, and so on. Receive more money but get malfunction, and in return it will reduce your damage by 50%, and then you remove your malfunction by killing 3 enemies with your melee attack. Simplistic as it gets. No skill tree, you can carry only 1 weapon, weapon variety is poor, you die, you keep important upgrades and lose entire progress for your next run. Classic roguelite mechanics, simplified to the ground for consoles. Itemization is classic, recover health, deal more damage for 30 seconds, etc. Not only that there is no innovation in this so-called masterpiece, it also dumps down the entire roguelite genre with its simplicity. 6 out of 10 for leveling and itemization. Next section would be NPCs and enemies. No NPCs in this game, only the main protagonist who tries to escape her PMS loop. Enemy variety is solid for such a short game. All enemies are alien, as I like to joke around while playing Balls and Tentacles. That's the proper name for this game instead of Returnal. Balls and Tentacles. AI is also solid, but you move faster than projectiles in this game, so basically nothing can hit you if you focus enough during your runs. 5 bosses in total during main campaign, all look the same and all of them are using 10,000 missiles and projectiles bullet hell on you. You dodge, you get around 5 seconds or so to shoot at them back, then 10,000 blue, green and red projectiles again, you dodge again, shoot back and repeat. Every single boss has the same mechanics with 3 phases. Every upcoming phase comes with more projectiles. All monstrosities melt with background too, so it's hard to spot where enemies actually are, so minimap in 90% of time will be your lifesaver since it detects enemies. I'll be honest here, even if it looks great, I just don't like design of enemies at all. They all feel like slime, generic twisted tentacles that spam projectiles on every 5 seconds, from regular enemies to mini bosses and of course main bosses. 6 out of 10 for NPCs and enemies. The last section would be music and sound. The best thing about the entire game is Blue Oyster Cult and Don't Fear the Reaper song that was recorded in 1976 is the best part of the entire game. That says it all about the actual game then. Now jokes aside, atmospheric music in the game a bit depressive, not a single memorable song. Sound effects were fine, voice acting is also great no matter the amount of bullshit the main protagonist says. That's the writing, but the voice acting was actually quite good. 8 out of 10 for music and sound. Final verdict. We got 9 sections with 57 points and that would be 6.3 out of 10 for Returnal. Yes, it's probably above 7 out of 10 for consoles, it's probably above 8 out of 10 for someone that never got to play 10,000 roguelites on Steam. There are far better shooters, there are far better roguelites than Returnal. Returnal is far away from a masterpiece. I feel like people and media are throwing masterpiece word on every second day now. Masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen, is Diablo 1. Masterpiece is Doom 1. Masterpiece is Witcher 3. Masterpiece is Baldur's Gate 2. Masterpiece is Disco Elysium. Those games are deserving the masterpiece title. Returnal is a solid game, simplified and repetitive roguelite. Nothing more, nothing less. Short, overpriced, overrated, with plenty of performance issues in return. I would recommend Returnal once and if it drops under 20 bucks. For sure it's not worth the full price. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you on the next one. Thanks for watching.